morning. I was going to say, good morning, America. Try and keep up. I'm hyper. Oh, my goodness. Okay, what are we talking about? Tell us, Vince.
We were talking about church and restoration of the church.
Yes.
Our series is restoration. The topic this week is church. So we are excited. Hey, take an impartation of the energy. We're doing it through the internet.
All yours. Just go listen to yourself on 2 times the speed, and apparently that just gives you all the energy you need.
That does it. You get a double portion of yourself.
Which is the perfect segue to tell you. So this morning when I was asking God, I'm like, where are we going with this? Like, we want to do a deep dive on these unedited chats. And so I'm like, we've got to start at an appropriate depth here. And like, God, I understand. I have understanding of what it is that you're doing in restoration, but give me some like grit, something to hold on to here. And so he was like, I want you to go find your teaching from whatever and listen to it. And if you listen, I hate listening to myself.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's like embarrassing to me for whatever reason. And even if nobody else is around, I just don't like it.
Yeah.
And I didn't have enough time to listen to it on regular speed. So I had to listen to it on 2 times the speed. And so, it was like speed for me. And but what I knew immediately that, what it was that God was highlighting was a dream that I had back in the fall. And in the dream, I was playing volleyball. And this is a very familiar sport to me. I played all growing up, and then I coached the sport. And so I know the techniques inside and out, and you have to when you're a coach because you have to be nitpicky about everything. But I was being coached by God in my dream how to jump higher and to hit with more power. And woke up knowing exactly what it was that he was after. And so we have been in this retraining season for a few months now, where God is just really highlighting, like, I am retraining you. And I think that that's just going to continue to ramp up as 2023 unfolds. And but what he was really wanting me to pay attention to was that we tend to, like, when we are at the beginning of a new year, we have new on our mind, and we're like looking for the shiny and the new, and we're looking for things to be unearthed, and we want that discovery. But that's not what he's doing right now. He's taking things that are familiar to us to bring about better form in that, better strength in that. And so that was really telling for me to have him use something that I had already taught on, something that was familiar to me, to really begin to help me understand this is what he's doing. Like, he's not going to lay something new and shiny before us. He is shining something familiar up. He's bringing their form to what we already have access to things that are already so familiar to us, which is fun for me, because although it is retraining for me is more difficult because I tend to be a little bit stubborn. I already know how to do the thing. And so it's hard for me to shift in the familiar to move slightly in a different direction and allow God to be able to tweak the things. And like I was telling you guys, Vince and Pepper, before we got started here, it's like it takes very little for to lose form in really anything that you do, but especially in sports. It's easy to lose form, to get off track. They call it, a slump in sports. And all it takes is a few times, a few reps of doing it wrong. And suddenly you are miles away from doing it right. And I feel like that's, where we have gotten ourselves as the body, as the ecclesia. And God is just wanting to bring new form to that. He is wanting to retrain us. And there's some intimacy in that also, that we need to really regard, that he is wanting to retrain us, not just, retrain, let's retrain each other kind of thing. He is wanting to step in and bring about the retraining. And I know, Vince, that you had some things along those same lines. So jump in.
Yeah. So when starting to consider this, and one of the things we'll be going back to throughout the entire year is this word that was released, that we released. I don't remember, a couple of months ago, I guess now. But we're going to keep going back to that, because there is relevance to each of these topics, because all the topics that we're going to be talking about are pulled from this, because of the themes that that God's going after and that we're wanting to press into. And right at the beginning of this, it talks about identity. It says, "Into the wardrobe, grab your apparel, and move through quickly. Never mind the clutter and chaos of the unkept closet. I've packed up boxes." God has packed up boxes from last season, and he's returning them to the sender. These are boxes of mixture, deception, and other possessions that will not serve you where we're going. Sleeping agents that have kept my bride in a stupor. Identity is of utmost importance, not in appearance, but in character. So going deep, like what you're talking about earlier. These garments in your hands are to be consumed. They fit on the inside to shine through with brilliance. So eat up. Love that. And thinking about that, and thinking about the identity of the church, the body of Christ, and how we've gotten to a point of needing to be restored. It's a familiar journey that has been walked through in many different forms, but has the same progression each time. And one of the things he was showing me was is how this progression works. But before I get there, one of the things that he's highlighting to me, God was highlighting to me in this, to be able to look at what it is that he's doing, make sure that we keep our gaze fixed on him, and do what it is he's doing. Because if we don't, we get to this point, we get our eyes off of him, we start to look at other things, we start to chase after the wrong things, trying to do things in our own strength, and we get to this point where we aren't on path with what it is that he's wanting us to do, and where he's taking us. Another part of this says, "I'm raising up a misfit militia. Each will be trained by my hand in ongoing intimacy." And this is a place we have to get to. And we keep talking about this over and over again, that intimacy that you need to be pushing into, that oneness, that union that you share with him. It says, "Continue to govern the fire. Continue to steward well each flame. I know you grow tired and even weary, but you must keep pushing. Simply continue to narrate what I show you. I am meeting with each when least expected. In the moment, out of the moment, it matters little. What happens individually will translate corporately and is lasting. The embers of intimacy will be seen soaring through." And later on, we read this the other day. It says, "Hold the line of conviction, break the back of tolerance, and continue to echo no compromise." And later down, it says, keep perspective of me, who I am, qualify me with every step. Remember my majestic ways, recognize my moods and mannerisms, memorize my facial expressions." We're not going to be able to do that if we aren't in intimacy. Yeah. And you can go into John 5, starting in verse 17, and Jesus is replying to the people who are just coming at him and throwing accusations. And he says he only does what he sees the Father doing, right? And that's what we're talking about here. When we look at God and we see his mannerisms, his expressions, the way he is responding to people and not reacting, we have to be able to do that. And so getting back to how we got to the point of needing, I keep losing the word here with the series. Restoration. Thank you. How we got to the point of needing restoration is this progression of we will tolerate something, we begin to compromise, then we start to affirm that thing, and then there is an acceptance, and finally an adoption. And so we move from tolerance to compromise to affirming to acceptance to adoption. And this progression is not a quick and rapid thing. It's slow, but you can look by and large in our culture right now and see it taking place. And the wild part is it's thrown out to say, we've gotten here because, Jesus would go hang out with sinners. Well, sure, he did, but there was a transformation of those people on the backside of that. He didn't just stop short at hanging out with them. Mm-hmm. The story that was really shown to me and pulled out for this was with Zacchaeus. He was someone who was considered a great sinner because he was in charge of the tax collectors in Judea, and he got rich through this. And he didn't transform before his encounter with Jesus. He wanted to see him. Really what he did in this story and climbing the tree was he just wanted to get a look at Jesus. That was it. He just wanted to see him. But Jesus saw him and said, I'm going to hang out with you today. I'm going to come to your house, have a meal, and spend time with you. And Zacchaeus could have said no, but he didn't. He accepted the invitation. And in that encounter, there was a transformation. So he didn't stop short at just hanging out. There was a transformation. And so in this tolerance, compromise, affirming acceptance, adoption trail there, we get on that with what we believe are good intentions and wind up just contained.
Yeah. Yeah. Pepper, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I was thinking about, for one, I really like, Vince, the way you broke that down, because I've never really thought about how do you get to the point that you need restoration. Mm-hmm. I've never reflected on that. So that I really like the way you broke that down. And I was thinking about something that Emma Stark said once about how risk averse we are. And so it's like, I think that even leads us on a trail to needing restoration, because it's like, because of our carnal man, all we want to attain is comfortable.
Yeah.
And so once we feel like we have whatever comfortable is, we just stop there. And we don't push, and we don't want to feel the tension that's between us and God and us and people. And so I really feel like even in all this restoration, if there is a new, it's a new glory, because he said we go from glory to glory. Right. But we get to that one glory, the last glory, and that's good. I'm comfortable here. And so I don't need another glory because I feel comfortable. And so I think there's a element of promotion even in this too, that we might be overlooking, because, I don't know much about volleyball, but I would think that what you expect from your high school girls, if you were coaching grade school, you might see the grade schoolers and say your form is really good. But if you see that same form from the high schoolers, you'd say this is not good form.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we take God pushing us forward as almost an accusation that we didn't do good enough, and God's saying, I'm promoting you. You're done with that level. That level served you then, but it's not going to serve you now. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I was really thinking about as far as even the going deeper, and a maturity in our form too.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, that's so true, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because the same way that, you could not push, a 10-year-old the same way that you could a teenager, there,
Mm-hmm.
because of the expectation. There is an
Mm-hmm.
expectation, and the same thing goes for Jesus and Zacchaeus, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus went into that encounter with expectation. He had an expectation on Zacchaeus's life, and he rose, right? And I think that so often we have such little expectation of one another.
Yeah.
Remember, we are talking about the ecclesia here. And
Yeah.
we have such low level expectation of one another that we don't rightly push. We don't rightly drive one another into the new glory, right? That is the new. That is the thing that we're all wanting to see, is the new level of glory. And so I think that, yes, there is an element of new that we will be surrounded with, but what the retraining is in the old, and him wanting to bring better form. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that we are going to need to lean heavily into Holy Spirit to even know how to push one another. Because,
Yes.
I mean, like, God knows full well what I'm capable of. Right now, I feel like He is driving me, and like, he's got that whip in his hand, and he's like, I know what
I
you're
was thinking
capable
that, but I
of.
didn't want to say it.
And he's pushing, and I feel like I'm at the brink of breaking on a regular basis. Like, I don't know how much more I can handle, and he's like, I do. Let's go. And
Giddy up.
yeah, and I don't even remember when it was. Maybe it was last Wednesday. I don't know. I don't remember when it was, but I had shared that God had shown me that this picture of Him saddling our minds and bridling our tongues, and I feel like that's where He's seated right now, is on our minds, because we have such a low level expectation of our own capacity, that we believe that we can only accomplish so much, that we must, have X amount of hours of rest, and let's just be real here. We have actually brought rest into deity.
Yeah.
We are serving rest. I am not negating rest. I get it. We need to take that seriously. God said to take that seriously. But the thing is like, we have entered into rest. We are already there. We are already seated in a place of rest. And so this idea that we need to go searching for rest is obscene. And it's holding us back from accomplishing the things that God has set before us. And so we need to allow Him to drive us in the season and to push us to prove what it is that we are capable of, because we have such low expectation of self that we actually transfer that to one another, and we don't have any expectation. And this is something that Vince and I talk about all the time, because we're in a position right now where we are having to train employees and volunteers. And there is such a difference in the way that we are willing to train, to treat the two different sectors, if you will, of the sacred and the secular. And like there's something about employees that you feel like I can push them. But then when it comes to volunteers, there's like this coddling that takes place. This is the problem with our church culture, is it is a coddling mentality brought about by the shepherding movement. We are so heavy on the shepherd mentality, and I am not placing blame on the pastoral. That's not what I'm doing. Don't misunderstand me. The entirety of the ecclesia has shifted into a pastoral mindset where we have just began to collect people and aren't doing anything with them. And something that Simon Breaker had said months ago was, I think he was talking about his own kid. Like, his kid was whining about something that happened at school, and it was a real thing. Like, the kid was being bullied or whatever, and Simon was like not having any compassion on him whatsoever, not what his kid was wanting anyway. And he turned around. I think that he was in the car. He turned around and he goes, my job is not to coddle you. My job is to weaponize you. And so we need to take on that same mentality as the church, that our job is to no longer coddle one another, that we are to be weaponizing one another. Like, I am doing a disservice to you, Pepper, if I look and see that you are playing low level and I say nothing. That's not my job. As part of the ecclesia, my job is to weaponize you, to call out what you're capable of, and to put that expectation as high as I can possibly see and watch you rise. The problem is that we set the bar so low that there's zero expectation put on anyone, and that's called tolerance and compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's good. Our volunteers better watch out.
Yo, gosh, I feel they're all gonna scatter. My husband's in the background and he just said, I quit.
You can't quit.
That speaks to our cancel culture, but we won't go there.
This is going to be a fun conversation on Sunday. I'm looking forward to continuing this. It's going to be good.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because honestly, I feel like we are learning daily what this actually looks like. And so, it's so interesting when you have like a word compiled for the entirety of a year and you start like really teasing that thing out. It's like discovering like, oh gosh, like your intention on this is so fierce that like he's not going to relent. We are not in a season where we're going to see God relenting, where we can push him around by whining. And I think that we've been there. I think that he has allowed it. Like there has been a tolerance even on God's end where he's going like, oh, look, aren't they cute? They sure are trying. And but we're not there. We're not in that place because I feel like he is more in a posture of expectation. And that's, Jesus entered into every encounter with a lofty expectation over the people that he was going after. And Zacchaeus may have climbed up into a tree to get a better look at Jesus, but he was hidden. He wasn't wanting to be seen.
Right.
But Jesus has plans, right? And we can even say the same with the woman with the issue of blood. Here she is like trying to be kind of covert and not be seen. Clearly there's reason for it. She could be, excommunicated. And she goes up and she tries to pull power from him because she knows who he is, right? But he knows who she is. And so there's expectation that he carries into every scenario. And so here's the picture that I have is like he wants to come close to us right now with this incredible expectation, with this overpowering, overwhelming expectation. And the big question is are we going to rise? As the church, are we going to rise? It's intimidating.
Yeah.
And we might not be familiar with who he knows, what he knows of us in this season, but that doesn't matter. He knows. He knows who we are. He knows what we're capable of. And that's what we need to really lean into is his knowledge of who we are, because we have tolerated a lackluster knowledge of ourselves and one another.
Yeah.
Go Ecclesia.
Yeah.
That what you said about low level expectations. And if you look at even how the church has begun to use the word tolerance the way the world uses it, because scripture teaches us that we're to be violent with the flesh, and so we can't be violent with each other, because we won't be violent with ourselves. We won't speak to our own soul. There's days I just have to talk to myself. And if somebody was here, they think she's crazy, but I just say, Pepper, no, you're not doing that. You're not saying that. You're not acting that way. There's so much that I tolerate for myself that I have to say, I won't tolerate this. And so I think we bought into that message from the world to me, it's really an excuse to not push.
Right.
Because you can just stop at that level where you say, well, this is just who I am and you have to tolerate. So I can't tell you that you're living a low life that's beneath what God died for you to have, because, you're going to come back with the argument if you have a worldly mindset. Well, this is just who I am. This is who he made me. No, this is what you've tolerated. And that message has seeped into the church that if you don't tolerate people as they are, you don't love them. And so one thing about coaching volleyball or coaching anything, if you're the one in the game, you can't see your own form. So somebody else has to see my form.
Right.
But we've become so offense driven.
Yes.
That nobody can look at our form. Nobody can tell us about our form.
You're just judging me.
You're right. And even myself, I have to admit, I don't rightly know how to do my job with you guys and each other in that way, because we've, like I said, become so offense driven that, what would it be like for you coaching the girls if you said, no, knock it off? And they said, what? How can you judge me? That's your job.
Right.
That's my job, to look at your form and tell you where it's off or tell you where it's good. It's not all bad, but we have to get over our offenses and being offense driven, and that subtle message from the world that's seeped into the church, that you have to be a tolerant person.
Right. Well, and I think that because tolerance has been so much a part of our culture, that we don't have a right picture of self, right? Like we think we're doing these great big things, and from another perspective, it's like, what are you doing down there playing so low level? And I actually have had this conversation, with someone who's like, Angie, why are you playing so low? Like, why? What's your deal? And I was astonished, because in my own perspective, I was doing big, brave things, but he was calling me out, which I'm so thankful of, because that was actually a catalyst moment for me to realize, like, oh my gosh, I am playing very low level here. And I needed somebody to come in with like that dagger word. And there was nothing prophetic about it. We think everything is like so super spiritual. And all this was somebody with an honest perspective of how I was performing. And this has been, I mean, not to, I don't know, sports has been my life, but one of the things that I would do as a coach is ask the girls, I want you to pick out somebody. Let's go to YouTube, pick out someone that you want to be able to hit, like someone that this is what I want to ascribe to be. And then to like try to emulate that. Like how are you going to get there? And they really thought that they were there. They thought they had arrived. And so then it's at that point that you pull out your little camera and you start recording, how they're attacking the ball, and then do the comparison. And it's mortifying to have to really closely examine yourself and realize how far off my form is. Like this has no form. I am like barely, this is like bunny hopping off the ground. I have no vertical. I'm tippy-toeing this thing and I have no strength whatsoever. And so it's an honest evaluation. And this is something that we are so afraid of, is that honest evaluation from one another. And we do immediately label it judgment. You're just judging me. And here's the thing, for those who are listening and you're wondering, what this looks like, this is not your own opinion. Do not validate your own opinion of somebody in your life. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about God knowledge of the person that is in your life. If you want to be someone who is getting on board with what it is that God is doing, then you have to learn how to partner with the vision of Holy Spirit for that individual. This is not your low-level critique of someone. We are not nitpicking here. We are partnering with the Spirit to drive each other into greatness. All nitpicking and complaining is going to do is hold that person hostage. You're going to make them feel like all they're doing is sludging through mud on a regular basis. Not what we're talking about. We're talking about high level understanding of one another. That's what the ecclesia is called to have high level understanding of one another and to rightly legislate life.
Yes.
Can we get that ingrained in our minds that we are called to legislate one another's lives? This isn't just about legislating government. It's not about world power. This is about ecclesia power. It's about kingdom power. To learn how to rightly legislate one another. You know, the three of us work closely together, and I have to know how you tick. I have to know when you are feeling too much pressure and how to alleviate that and when to push. You know, it's intimate knowledge of one another, and to be able to rightly push and to call out and to build up. You know, it's laid out in scripture what it is we are called to do with one another, and we're doing the opposite. And I love, I'm going to go back up here to the notes. What Vince laid out was, it's tolerating and then compromise, affirming, and adoption. Well, we have the affirming and adoption as part of the kingdom. So this is where I feel like it gets so skewed, is because it has a familiarity to kingdom life with that affirmation and that spirit of adoption, but it's from the wrong source.
Ooh.
When you start off with tolerating stuff and compromising, and then you tag affirmation and adoption on the end of it, we are people who are addicted to affirmation, but all it is stroking our ego. That's it. That affirmation that follows toleration and compromise is just stroking our ego, and we need to get over ourselves. We need to drop the ego game and step into kingdom life to be able to see all that God has dreamt up for us. He has a dream. Like, let's get into the middle of the God dream and see what happens.
Yeah, that's good.
Iron sharpens iron.
Yep.
And that's
right.
Friction, right?
It's not comfortable for sure.
Yeah.
It's gonna be some uncomfortable moments when we bring these things up and we talk about them. But if we allow it to be uncomfortable and not offensive, it's going to be okay. And it's going to be growth. You're going to land in that new level of glory. You're going to stick that landing.
Stick the landing. Yes. Ooh, I love that topic. And the thing is you don't even know that you need to take off without somebody in your life really pressuring you, really putting that pressure on, creating that friction, bringing the heat. You just don't know. You don't know that you're in a space of compromise. You don't realize that, you're at a standstill unless you have somebody going like, what are you doing? I mean, this has been a very real thing for me, where Vince was willing to step in and be like, Angie, like, you don't belong here. What are you doing? Like, you are playing so low level, and you need to move. You need to do something different. And I finally had the guts to do something about it. And on the backside of that, he was like, hey, way to stick the landing. And so we need both. We need the prodding to like get moving. Like you need to advance. You're stuck right now. You're settling for something that is beneath you. And then on the backside of that, we need the voice of affirmation going like, good job. Well done. You did it. Now let's keep going.
Yeah.
They'll get comfortable.
Exactly. Yeah. So
that's keeping pace right there.
Yeah.
That is keeping pace. And that's something that we need to pay attention to. We need to know what is the pace or the cadence. I think that because it's a time of God calling for high praise, the cadence is the perfect word, because there is a beat that we need to be aware of in this season.
I love you talking about cadence. It takes me back to the Army days, and there were two types of cadence: quick time, which is just marching, and a double time, which is running. But both were moving and moving forward.
Wow. Whew, I'm excited.
Yeah.
But we should end this.
We need to.
All right, you guys, thank you for joining us this morning. It is not too late. We do have Kingdom Indivisible that is starting this morning, and it's going to be every Wednesday at 9 a.m. If you want to be a part of that, say so in the comments right now, and we'll get you added to the group. This is not a thing where you can just show up and participate. Where you can just show up and listen, rather. You need to come prepared, armed, and dangerous. Okay. Like, there is an expectation if you're going to jump into our Kingdom Indivisible endeavors. And just one little tidbit more is, like, think roundtable conversations. Like, we are interested in advancing the kingdom through honest conversations and propelling each other forward. So if you want to be a part of that, say so in the comments, and we'll get you added, because we are starting that in 22 minutes. All right, guys, until the next time, be blessed.